The anime begins with a group of Mihama Academy students gathering in a dormitory. They are Amane Suo, Sachi Komine, Michiro Matsushima, Yumiko Sakaki, and Makina Irisu. They were reading a document containing information about the past of a student named Yuji Kazami. From that document, they learned that he had killed someone before. Knowing that, Amane suddenly burst into tears, saying that she was the one who caused Yuji to live in misery. She thought that she was the one who had turned Yuji's life into chaos by leaving Kazuki, who was Yuji's older sister. But she had died when they were in middle school, and Amane thought that her death made Yuji's life miserable. Seeing Amane cry, her friends tried to calm her down, telling her not to rush to conclusions. Then they all continued reading the document to dig deeper into Yuji's past. The scene switches to the meeting between Yuji and Julia Barbara, a special forces member who is now Yuji's bodyguard. Julia told him to tell her about his past, which he had been hiding. Then a flashback to when Yuji was a kid is shown. In the past, he was being treated at the hospital due to trauma. Kusakabe Asako and Julia then visited Yuji. Asako, who was his caregiver after his parents died, told him to get ready to be discharged from the hospital immediately. Like a military commander, she gave him 40 seconds to get ready while insisting that Yuji was now hers. She even said that from now on, she was his god. Hearing those words, little Yuji was silent as he stared at Asako with no expression. Once home, Asako intends to bathe Yuji, who is very disheveled and smelly. But when he took off his clothes, Asako and Julia were surprised to see his thin body covered in wounds. Asako then asked Yuji about his poor condition and gave him some food. But while Yuji was eating his food, he suddenly shook violently and shouted as if he remembered something that had disturbed him. Asako and Julia tried to calm Yuji down. And when he was asleep, the two of them then talked about his severe trauma condition. Julia thought that Yuji had suffered a lot mentally and physically, and so she suggested that he should just be killed. But Asako rejects the idea, as she is determined to raise him. One day, Asako brought a puppy for Yuji and told him to take care of it. Yuji named the dog John. John's presence in his life makes Yuji slowly regain his joy, and now he behaves like a normal child. Asako and Julia were also happy to see the progress, at least until Asako tries to resign from the special forces. One day, Asako shows Julia her resignation letter. Surprised, Julia asked what the letter meant. And this is where Asako explains that she can't work as she should anymore because her vision is getting blurry. She even felt that she could no longer aim her rifle properly, even though she was known as a reliable sniper. Therefore, she plans to become an instructor at a hunter school in America and takes Yuji with her. Yuji and Asako's daily life continued, and one day Asako gave Yuji various books to read. According to her, men who are good at fighting will only be popular among middle schoolers. But in high school, intelligence will make a person famous. Because of this, Asako not only taught Yuji how to fight, shoot, and other military skills, but she also told Yuji to study hard. As Asako was sitting cleaning her rifle, Yuji asked her about her real profession, and she confessed to him. She is an agent of CIRS, or Central Intelligence Research Second, a union of Japanese and American counterterrorism organizations, and her job is to finish off the bad guys. But Yuji didn't really understand Asako's explanation. To him, her job sounded troublesome. Thanks to Asako's guidance, Yuji's shooting ability slowly but surely became more prominent. Now he is adept at shooting from a considerable distance. So to celebrate his progress, Asako presented him with a rifle that he could use for training. Yuji is so impressed with the weapon Asako gave him that he calls her master, because to him, she is neither a mother nor a sister. But one morning, when he just woke up from his sleep, Yuji found the house in a state of shambles, with John constantly barking. He finally found the cause of the chaos. A big bear had entered the house. Yuji spontaneously rushed to get his rifle. But unfortunately, when he returned to where the bear was, he saw that John had been grabbed by the bear. Yuji then aimed at the bear to save John, but he could not fire a single shot. He is still affected by the trauma that makes him unable to hurt living beings. And so, he just stared at John being carried away by the bear into the forest. Then he sat alone crying. But that's when he realized that John meant a lot to him, just like Asako. With that, he then ventured to chase the big bear into the forest while carrying a knife and rifle. Unfortunately, he fell after stepping on a layer of slippery snow while running toward the bear. Immediately the bear approached Yuji, and while in that state of life and death, a voice suddenly appeared in his head, accompanied by flashes of terrifying memories. Voices echoed in his mind and asked him to kill the bear because it had snatched something precious from him. Then suddenly, he managed to cut the big bear's eye with a stick. He then took his rifle. But when he was about to kill the bear, he saw two bear cubs coming closer, making him give up his intention to kill it. In the end, he concluded that the mother bear was simply looking for food for her cubs, though that still couldn't take the sadness away from him at the loss of John. With that, Yuji burst into tears, regretting his helplessness for not being able to protect the dog. When he returned home, Yuji told Asako about his disappointment. He felt useless for not being able to kill a bear that had eaten John. Asako felt Yuji's sadness from the look on his face and the tears on his cheeks, so she immediately hugged him. Once again, Yuji burst into tears. In front of John's grave, Yuji promises to become stronger and stop being a coward. He wants to be like Asako, the figure he has always looked up to. Time passed, and one day in the house, Asako told Julia that she had taken Yuji's virginity, arguing that it was natural since she and Yuji were the opposite sex who had lived in the same house for 2 years. Hearing the relationship between Asako and Yuji, Julia felt uneasy. Unfortunately, Asako realized it and immediately told Julia to sleep with Yuji if she wanted to try it. Those words made Julia blush. Then without further ado, Asako told Yuji to do it with Julia. At that instant, with a cold expression on his face, Yuji pulled Julia into the room, causing Asako to laugh in satisfaction. The scene then switches to Julia and Asako chatting in the living room while Yuji comes to bring them drinks. But in the middle of the chat, Julia suddenly got angry. She had just found out that Yuji would replace the ailing Asako on a secret mission, and Julia wasn't happy to hear that. Yuji tried to calm Julia down by saying that it was his own wish, as a form of repaying Asako. Since Yuji's decision was unanimous, Asako suggested to Julia that she should make a work permit certificate for Yuji. According to her, Yuji's military skills have been tested, and at the same time, meet the requirements to advance to the next stage, namely training at the military base. And not long after that, Yuji officially joined as a CIRS special agent. A new journey for him begins. Yuji and Asako then leave for the United States, where Yuji will be training in the Navy while Asako works as an instructor at a hunter school. There, Yuji befriends Daniel Bourne, whom he calls Danny. But Danny calls Yuji Shorty because he finds it difficult to pronounce Japanese names. On the first day, all the trainees were lined up in the middle of the field under the heat. One of the instructors named Agnes Garrett suddenly approached Yuji and slapped him. Agnes, who is Asako's classmate, realizes that Yuji has inherited Asako's codename, 9029. She then tells Yuji that she owes Asako a lot, and therefore she wants to give him special treatment. Then the scene switches to a shooting practice session, where Yuji can get a perfect score and manages to make his team win first place. His shooting ability caught the attention of Miliela Stanfield, a girl from another team. Miliela, or Millie for short, then approached Yuji while he was resting while reading a book and challenged him to a fight. Without further ado, Yuji punched her in the face, making her wince in pain. But what she meant by fighting was by shooting target, not hand-to-hand combat. After understanding the meaning of her words, Yuji accepted the challenge. They then head back to the shooting range, where Millie gives Yuji a challenge to shoot a Ken that is 200 yards away with a rifle that only has a 100-yard range. But it didn't matter much to him. He managed to conquer the challenge on his second shot. No doubt, his prowess impressed Millie, and she asked Yuji what kind of magic he used. In response, Yuji arrogantly replied that he was a genius who wasn't on her level. Millie herself already knew that Yuji was called Genie by his friends, and now she finally realized that the nickname meant genius. From now on, she looked at Yuji with admiration. The story continues until it is almost time for Yuji and his friends to jump into the real battlefield. Now Yuji, Danny, and Millie are in a team, and they heard the news that an additional member dubbed Immortal will join their team. Out of curiosity, they took the initiative to meet him in person, and it was later revealed that the new member was not as scary as his nickname. He is Robert Walson, a weeb. Robert has a hobby of playing visual novel games and is very obsessed with cute girl characters, or emoto. He often shouted emoto emoto banzai, but the people around him misheard and thought Robert's words were immortal. This silliness became the beginning of Robert being dubbed immortal by people. The scene then switches to the battlefield. On the way, Yuji tries to shoot a bird to test his guts to kill it, but apparently he was still traumatized and immediately threw up. After that, Yuji, Danny, Millie, and Robert finally arrived at the army camp. While inside the tent, they came across a soldier who was ordered to join their team. He is Edward Walker, one of Yuji's students in shooting training after being appointed as an instructor. Edward's arrival was followed by the team leader, Justin Mikemeyer, or commonly called Jay, a military doctor with the rank of Lieutenant 2. Jay proudly names his team the Bush Dog Squad. The task of the Bush Dog troops on the battlefield is actually just as reinforcements and land trappers. But while on the mission, Yuji suddenly heard the sound of an enemy approaching, and Robert confirmed that the enemy was about 800 meters from the front. Not long after the enemy troops were seen, there was a pretty fierce gunfight where Yuji managed to shoot several enemy soldiers with his rifle. But as a consequence, he constantly felt nauseous and vomited. Worried, Danny asks Yuji if he's okay before asking him to hold on a bit longer since reinforcements are underway. When the enemy army still had about 70 people left, Millie suddenly came to Yuji while giving him the bullets she picked up from the enemy's corpse. She then seduced Yuji while promising that she would hug him as much as he wanted if he survived. Those words made Yuji realize that he shouldn't look weak in front of women, especially in such a precarious situation. Yuji then ordered Danny to cover himself with dirt and leaves to more safely attack forward. Hearing Yuji's idea, Jay then ordered all the members to charge ahead and buy time until reinforcements arrived. They all finally made it through that terrible night without any major injuries. For Yuji, that experience was a turning point where he managed to get rid of the prolonged trauma that had been haunting him. After finishing his training, Yuji returned to Japan to Asako's house, where Asako was already waiting for him at the front. She complimented him by saying he now looks more manly, like a grown man. They then spend time together until nightfall, when Yuji suddenly says he still doesn't know how to make the most of his life. That's why he wanted to give his life to Asako. However, that romantic evening did not end well. While Asako was eating her dinner alone, her vision suddenly blurred, and she fell unconscious. After officially becoming a member of CIRS, Yuji inherits the legendary codename 9029, which previously belonged to Asako. Meanwhile, Asako herself withdrew from the organization due to her deteriorating health. Yuji's first assignment as a secret agent is to be a bodyguard in Colombia. But while on duty, he gets a call from Julia telling him that Asako has passed out and may not be able to survive for long. As soon as he heard that, Yuji rushed back toward Japan. Asako turns out to have a disease called venous thrombosis, or blood clots in the veins. It was caused by the rupture of a blood vessel after she took a shot from a high-caliber rifle. Arriving at Asako's house, Yuji is told by Julia that Asako's life is on the brink, and Asako was aware of that. Yuji couldn't hold back his tears anymore, thinking what happened to Asako was really unfair. But she calms him down, saying that he can now live with his own goals because she has God's permission to die. But stupidly, Yuji cursed God and threatened to crush God's head from 2,000 meters away. Hearing that, Asako laughed before saying that she was tired and needed rest. After that, she fell asleep, and she never opened her eyes again. After Asako's death, Yuji felt down. In his heart, he asked whether he would meet Asako in the same place if he died. Then he recalls his past memories when Asako gave him orders to save 5 people before he died. That moment was the only reason for him to survive. After that, Yuji decides to go around Japan using Asako's motorbike, hoping that the long journey will make him forget her. But the motor finally broke down after a long time of driving. Therefore, Yuji returns to visit Asako's grave, because after all, he still hasn't found his way in life. But unexpectedly, that's where Yuji got an answer about what to do next. He decided to take his teenage years as seriously as possible. With the help of Julia and Principal Chizuru Tachibana, Yuji becomes a high school student at Mihama Academy. That's the series of Yuji's past before he went to school and met Amane and the others. After meeting Julia and telling her about his past, Yuji gets a phone call from CIRS Division 1, who gives him a secret mission to shoot dead the most wanted terrorist, Ethan Glow. The order was handed down by the commander of Spec 9 and could not be refused. Yuji takes aim while connecting with a CIRS member named Adam via radio in a building. Adam told him where Ethan Glow would appear, which was under a large crane far ahead of Yuji, and Yuji absolutely could not fail the mission. Ethan Glow is a very hated enemy of the state, and therefore he must be removed immediately. Not long after, the target finally appeared. But when Yuji snooped around with his rifle, he seemed to recognize the figure. And sure enough, when Ethan turned his face towards Yuji, Yuji immediately shook with panic. He really recognized the man. Ethan himself already knew that Yuji was stalking him, and then he said that he was back. Yuji could understand what Ethan was saying from the movement of his lips, and it made him lose his cool. As a result, the operation ended in failure. A CIRS agent who was not far from the operation site asked over the phone what he should do with Yuji. The mysterious person on the other end of the phone orders the agent to arrest and detain Yuji. The scene then switches to Amane and her friends who happen to be watching the news reporting about the attack on the embassy. The attack was actually masterminded by terrorists led by Heath Oslo, whose real name is Ethan Glow. But strangely, the police have identified the terrorist as Yuji Kazami based on the CCTV footage in the embassy building. Because of that, Amane, Sachi, Michiro, Yumiko, and Makina rushed to Chizuru to discuss Yuji's case. It was from Chizuru that they finally got information that as a child, before he met Asako and Julia, Yuji had been raised by Heath Oslo, the leader of an international terrorist network. Hearing this fact, Yumiko suspects that Yuji is being used by the government to lure Oslo because they have a special relationship. Chizuru then asked the 5 girls not to do anything reckless that could make matters worse, especially since Mihama Academy would soon be disbanded because it had lost its investors. But Amane and the others responded with doubtful gazes. After that, Amane and her friends returned to the dormitory, where they talked again about Yuji, before Sachi finally led them to Yuji's room, which was filled with his writings about the girls. However, as they searched the room, Makina suddenly screamed after she found one of Yuji's suicide notes. While the girls still couldn't escape the shock, Chizuru came with her cell phone that was connected to Julia. Julia tells the 5 girls that Yuji has nothing to do with terrorists and is being secured in a facility building whose location is kept secret. Hearing that, the 5 of them became more curious about Yuji, and they decided to look for him. Yumiko, who is the smartest girl among them, is appointed as a strategist as well as intelligence to find information in the search mission for Yuji Kazami. The story then switches to Yumiko, who is looking for the whereabouts of Yuji's old friend, Robert Walson. From the information she obtained, Yumiko managed to find where Robert lived in Japan. Robert had already retired from his job as a special informant. He is now opening a soba shop with waiters in cute cat costumes. Not only that, but he also changed his name to James Okada. Even so, Yumiko was still able to get information from James regarding Yuji, who was being secured in Ichige's basement. In addition, James also confirmed Yumiko's suspicion that the government had indeed used Yuji as bait to negotiate with Oslo. But according to him, Yuji could have been given drugs to make him obey orders subconsciously. Oslo is actually eyeing the Thanatos system, a computer-based state defense system. The system has drawn controversy because its design involves human brain tissue so that it can think like ordinary humans. Because the system is so sophisticated, it can monitor the activities of individuals around the world through electronic devices that have an internet network. The scene then changes to a room where Yuji meets his older sister, Kazuki, in the form of a hologram. Kazuki said that she was saved by Amane in the past during a bus accident, but then her brain tissue was used to develop the Thanatos system. With Kazuki's genius, the Thanatos system was able to monitor communication transmissions worldwide and could infiltrate all types of systems. Even Thanatos system can easily change the password on any device in different countries. Kazuki then told Yuji that Oslo had smuggled out a nuclear bomb with an explosive power of up to a radius of 50 kilometers. Even so, the government couldn't help because they had already talked to Oslo and refused Yuji's exchange. It made Yuji curious about why Oslo needed him so badly, and so he asked Kazuki about it. Then came the fact that Yuji turned out to be the best sample made by Oslo's DuPont project. It was a project that aimed to create the best military soldiers through medicine, experimentation, and training. But in the process, many of the samples died from the side effects of the drugs, and Yuji was the only one who managed to survive. For Oslo, Yuji was a precious sample. Because of that, Kazuki ordered Yuji to find Heath Oslo and kill him. Yuji accepted the order without hesitation. After that, claiming to be Thanatos, Kazuki called Michiro. She tells her that she and her friends are allowed to save Yuji as well as help him thwart Oslo's plans. The 5 girls who happened to be trying to find Yuji immediately agreed to Thanatos' offer. The scene then switches to Oslo, who is talking to his men. Oslo's men question the boss's plan, which is causing them trouble. The reason is, they have recreated Yuji's physical strength through genetic engineering, but Oslo insists that it's just a coincidence and can't be said to be perfect. Yuji was the most perfect, the greatest species on Earth, and therefore, they had to recreate Yuji's genetic code once again. In the middle of the chat, someone suddenly knocked on the room's door. Oslo told him to come in, and surprisingly, the person had the exact same physical characteristics as Yuji. The only difference is that he has silver hair and red eyes, both of which are physical characteristics of Yuji. It turns out that he is DuPont, a clone of Yuji who was responsible for the attack on the embassy. During the attack, DuPont dyed his hair black to match Yuji's. The scene switched to Kazuki, who was instructing the 5 girls to save Yuji by making a raid. The mission, called Operation Rescue Yuji, will take place on the 6th at 6 p.m., because that's when Yuji will be transferred from where he is being held to undergo trial in Akasaka. At the same time, Oslo is also planning an invasion to seize Yuji from the government's hands. Of course, it will be an interesting battle, where 5 high school students will fight a ruthless terrorist organization to fight for Yuji. The long-awaited day finally arrived, and Makina went to the hotel to book a room that she would use to monitor and shoot enemies. Even though she was mistaken for a child by the hotel receptionist. She turned out to have good sniper skills, which she learned from Yuji when he was still at Mihama Academy. That was the reason why Kazuki appointed Makina as her sniper, and she wants her to shoot the vehicle escorting Yuji. Not only Makina, but Kazuki also instructed Amane to prepare a vehicle, while Sachi, who is proficient in assembling bombs, was trusted to launch a surprise attack. The rescue mission began, but Makina, who was monitoring the escort route from the hotel room with her rifle, saw the 3 government cars carrying Yuji being attacked by Oslo's men. The attack was successful. They snatched Yuji from government control. After capturing Yuji, Oslo's men put a bomb in his hand to prevent him from escaping. The bomb could destroy anything within a 1-mile radius, and only Oslo held the key to the bomb. Thus, even if Yuji could escape from them, he still had to find Oslo to release the bomb. On the other hand, the capture of Yuji by Oslo's men forced Kazuki to improvise on her plan. With that, she ordered Makina to stop the men at the crossroads. Thanks to her shooting ability, she stops 3 enemy vehicles with her rifle, forcing Oslo's men to get Yuji out of the vehicle. But right then and there, Sachi attacks with her homemade smoke bomb. In billowing smoke, she was able to subdue the armed terrorists alone. Meanwhile, Makina, who had run out of bullets, asked her friends to immediately flee from the attack location. And then, they fled in the vehicle that Amane had prepared. But it wasn't over yet, as reinforcements from Oslo came and chased them. After a helicopter appears and shoots at them, the situation gets worse for them. But fortunately, not long after, another helicopter appeared from the front. Millie apparently piloted the helicopter, who immediately opened fire on the pursuers, bringing them down. Meanwhile, Julia, who was in the Thanatos system room, received an order from Kazuki to free her physical body that was in the room. After she managed to find Kazuki, they then rushed towards where Yuji was. Yuji's rescue squad was now on the ship that Kazuki had prepared when suddenly they were surprised by the appearance of a submarine beside them. It turned out that the submarine was carrying Kazuki, who then introduced herself to them as Thanatos. As if not believing what she saw, Amane then approached Kazuki. All this time, Amane thought she was dead, and she had always felt guilty for it. However, that feeling seemed to disappear as soon as she heard Kazuki speak to her. She immediately ran over and hugged her while crying. After regaining consciousness, Yuji was reunited with Kazuki for the first time in a long time apart. All this time, he was very worried about his sister, to the point that he slapped her at the meeting. He then hugged her and wept in relief. At this moment, Yuji reiterated his decision to kill Oslo and then asked Kazuki for help in locating his whereabouts. After knowing the location of Oslo, he said goodbye to his 5 friends. Of course, Amane was protesting against Yuji's decision to go to Oslo's place because the 5 of them had gone to great lengths to save him. But here, Yuji comforted them while asserting that he would not die that easily. In the end, the girls couldn't help but let him go. Yuji departed in a helicopter piloted by Millie, and after a while of traveling, he finally arrived at an aircraft carrier that was the base for Oslo and his group. With his military equipment and abilities, he managed to storm the base alone, making Oslo aware of his arrival. Oslo certainly didn't want to miss this golden opportunity, and he immediately ordered his men to capture Yuji alive. But to his surprise, as soon as Oslo's men left the room, he saw his man being slaughtered by the boy he had underestimated. Not wanting to lose more soldiers, Oslo finally sent DuPont to capture Yuji. It didn't take long for DuPont and Yuji to cross paths on the runway. The two of them were two soldiers of identical abilities and physique, but DuPont still wanted to know which of them was stronger. And there's only one way to find out: they have to fight. But before that, DuPont threw in an injection containing the drug they used when they were research subjects. The drug can make the user's physical strength exceed an average human's. However, Yuji refused to use it. His refusal clearly angered DuPont, who felt belittled by Yuji. So without much more to say, he immediately attacked Yuji. In an instant, he was able to knock him down before forcibly injecting the drug into him. The effects of the medicine immediately reacted on Yuji's body. Hand-to-hand combat and gunfights continued, though DuPont's more agile movements gave him the upper hand. But when he was in a desperate position, Yuji suddenly thought of Asako and the memories of being with her, and those memories managed to give him strength. So with that, he launched a lightning-fast attack with his knife. He managed to stab DuPont right in the chest, causing him to perish. With the remaining energy, Yuji finally managed to find Oslo. As soon as he saw Yuji, Oslo immediately took the katana behind him. It was Asako's old katana. Julia once told Yuji that Oslo and Asako had fought before, but she failed to kill him. And now, it's time for Yuji to finish what Asako failed to do. Even though Yuji is only armed with a small knife, the final battle then begins. His condition was weakened, allowing Oslo to easily stab Yuji in the stomach. But at that disadvantage, Yuji still hasn't given up. He stabbed the katana deeper so he could pull Oslo's hands away. After successfully gripping Oslo, Yuji picked up the pen on the table and stabbed it into Oslo's nape. A moment later, Oslo stopped moving. He died at the hands of the person who became his obsession. At the end of the anime, Yuji is shown to have survived his fight against Oslo, though it took him 6 months to get back on his feet. Then Yuji, Kazuki, and the 5 Mihama Academy girls now live on the island which is inherited from Asako. They all live happy lives there. The good news continued after Julia and Chizuru told the 5 girls that the new Mihama Academy building had been built. In addition, Julia and Chizuru had also obtained permission to teach again. The good news made Amane and her friends very happy and excited. So to celebrate, they all took a picture together. So, through this anime, we can get a message about how precious our family and friends are. If not them, who else will help us in our time of trouble?